I'll welcome our audience. Ed, today's your lucky day because if you have any questions at all, you've got a bunch of experts arrayed. I see a couple of other folks joining us. Thanks for coming in. We're really excited to talk about branding in SharePoint today. Derek, I think you're controlling the slides. If you want to just flip us forward, our team and our roles today is going to feature Derek and Emily, with Todd singing a little bit of high harmony toward the end. But based on today's topic on the next slide, we're going to talk about branding and user interface customization in SharePoint, making SharePoint a lot more friendly and accessible for your users. So I know Derek and Emily have a lot of content. I don't want to stand in their way much longer. If you have questions, please use the chat in Teams. We'll be monitoring and fielding that. Try to leave some time for some Q&A at the end. But if you've got questions as you go, please bring them up. This is your time, right? And about that. So
yeah, or use the raise your hand feature too, right?
Yep,
and you can come off mute. Yeah, happy to have you come off mute and ask your questions live.
Yep.
Sometimes it's easier.
Yep, we are recording this. So not only for the live folks on the call, but for folks who will be watching it after the fact. So this is being recorded as well. So Derek, take it away, man. Get us started.
All right. Actually, Emily is going to kick us off today, and she's going to kick off with some basics.
So this is going to be a little bit of user experience at warp speed, but I reference a lot of resources throughout if you want to dig a little deeper. So let's just talk at a very high level of some of the basic concepts of user experience. One is having visibility in your system. So the more visible the function, the more likely it can be used. A good example I think about is think of your iPhone, and you kind of need to do research or find out from someone else how to do all of those magic swipes. So when you're building anything or working in your SharePoint environment, you don't want to be hiding these controls. Fortunately, I don't really have a SharePoint example of this because I haven't run into it very often. Another item that you want to consider is feedback. So if you're building a custom process or application, that you need to give the end user information about what has been done. This can be audio, tactile, verbal, or a combo. Think of the Microsoft To Do app. When I check off a task item, I get a little chime if my sound is on, an animation of that nice little confetti, as well as a checkbox and it actually moving to another list. So I get confirmation and feedback that what I did was completed. You'll also want to consider the constraints that you're building. So you want to restrict behaviors at specific moments. So for example, Mark and I worked on a project where we built a shipping log for a client. So if you're building a shipping log and after that package is sent, end users shouldn't really be able to edit that address because this package is gone. It's on its way to that magic destination. Of course, fixing data errors is a little bit of a different consideration than the constraints for the ideal business process that somebody is going through. And you want to make sure you're only giving them access to that relevant information at each step. Another item you want to consider is mapping. So this is the relationship between the controls and the effect. So my up and down arrow keys are a really clear example. When I click the up arrow, something goes up. When I click the down arrow, it goes down. So I don't know about you, but I struggle a lot with light switches and faucets. I seem to never know what is hot and cold and on and off because there's no natural mapping. So if you're building a custom application or user interface, you want to think about making sure that mapping is relational to something that we're used to in the real world. And if you want to know some fascinating examples, I highly recommend all of these basic user experience principles are coming from Don Norman, who wrote The Design of Everyday Things. The whole book is about what you're going to run into in your real life in the world. So he makes it really tangible to kind of understand these different items.
I'm just glad I'm not the only one that struggles with light switches and water faucets.
Don't even get started about three-way switches.
Exactly.
It's a real problem.
Oh, yeah.
The next one we have is consistent. Oh, almost there.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. The next one we have is consistency. So similar operations use similar elements to achieve similar tasks. So Microsoft 365 does give us access to those Fluent UI icons, and one of my favorite things is Chris Kent's Flycon tool to better search for them, since that search can be a little challenging. But if Microsoft 365 has this suite of beautiful icons, use those same ones in your applications that you're building, your interface that you're using, and make them match. So if the save button does something in Microsoft 365, make it do the same thing in your application, because all of your end users are spending more of their time in these other areas of other sites, or even in the modern day world with other websites. So using that save floppy disk icon to do something else breaks that consistency for them to be able to predict what's happening.
And Emily, before you
Yeah.
go on, this goes for your intranet. It goes for your Power App. It goes for your Flow. It sort of runs across the gamut. It's not just specific to, making sure that the save icon does the save action on a list item. It really goes farther than that. So keep these in mind as you're moving beyond.
Well, and I would say even outside of Office 365. So I do some stuff with Raspberry Pis and things like that, and that same set of icons is available there. So if you've got any other web properties inside of your company, inside and outside, you can use that same group of icons for consistency.
That's a great idea. Yeah, and that Flycon tool, you can also export those icons. So if you have other systems where you have the ability to upload custom icons, you can even use the ones that are already available, which is really cool. The last one we have is affordance. So this is an attribute of an object that lets users know how to use it. So for example, scissors. They have a certain size hole in their handles, so only my fingers fit in there. I can't use scissors with my toes. I've tried. I can open and close it, right? So this is a clue of what can be done, but it's my perception. So remember to also add in some like signifiers to make it more clear. So let's say there is 2 doors and I don't know if it's going to go out or in, right? A signifier you might see is a handle that goes towards you. That means I need to pull. Or if it's just flat, text that says push.
Let's not talk about scissors and left-handed people.
It's painful. So continuing on, this is kind of the 30,000 foot view, right? And we don't have time to go over all of the ways that this can show up in design mistakes, but a lot of these are some things you can consider while you're building your intranet or your custom applications, right? Inconsistency across the sites, make sure you're giving them good error message. If you have a Power Apps form, have some default values to make items clear. Label your icons. Don't just put an icon and assume everyone's going to know what that icon means, because it could be interpreted different ways. So I highly recommend this article that's listed at the bottom to dig into that a little bit deeper. Thinking of all of these different user experience behaviors, continuing on, we want to think about accessibility. Because at the end of the day, Tim Berners-Lee, who is the inventor of the World Wide Web and the W3C director, quotes, "The power of the web is in its universality." So access by everyone, regardless of disability, is an essential aspect. So think about that when you're building for your organization as well. On our next slide, we talk about some of these types of impairments. One of the most common one discussed is visual, but don't forget that there's also motor, hearing, and cognitive. About 15% of people in the world have some form of disability. So this is a really large percentage of your user base. Continue on to our common accessibility considerations. What Derek's going to use some very tangible examples are around the design characteristics that we should be thinking about. So your font size and style, colors and contrast, what we're going to talk about a lot with the SharePoint themes, writing style to support how people read on the web, images, video, and audio. So one example, when you're designing your pages, that was perfect transition, Derek.
I screwed it up.
is information density. So when people read on the web, they are scanning, right? So we want to be able to support things like content chunking. So this is where I'm going to ask people on the phone to come off mute. Can you name all 3 design elements in the more dense image on the left? Or Simpraxians. There's 3 designs.
I give up. I don't know any of this. Whew, it's a good thing I'm not a designer.
Text block and header.
Close. You got 2 out of 3, image and text. The other one is white.
I was going to say animal, vegetable, and mineral, but yeah.
Not quite. The one that people always forget is white space. White space is part of your design elements, and that's one of the #1 complaints I hear about SharePoint pages. Too much white space. I strongly disagree. That supports your ability to scan and have that content chunking. In user experience, there's the law of common regions, where if you group things near each other, they're related. If you don't have any white space, everything's related. And I guarantee you everything on your SharePoint page is not. So
I think go ahead, Emily.
Just a link to the visual design cheat sheet at the bottom in case you need a little practice learning some of those terms to be able to talk about it with your teams. To you,
Cool.
Derek.
Yep, and I think one of the prime examples of this one, and I run into this a lot, is creating a page and using a single a section with one column in it and putting one big block of text in it. When you do that, your user essentially has to turn their head to read the whole line of text. And given that they're not actually reading, they're scanning for those salient points. Thinking about chunking that up and providing more white space, maybe using a 2/3, 1/3, where the text is on the left and there's an image or something else that's related to that content on the right-hand side. It helps break that text line up and helps make it a little more usable for your readers.
It always amazes me how people set up pages without ever thinking about would they be willing to read them. Right? I mean,
it's
that's
really
like
true.
the number one test. Would you read this page? And I don't think most people put it through that filter.
Yeah, I agree with you. We end up with pages that are super, super long and have really dense pieces of information on them. And you're better off chunking those things up and either putting them in sections that are visually defined or even splitting them up on multiple pages and providing links to them. It really helps to make that a lot easier. So from a branding perspective, we're going to move now into some of the stuff that we did talk about in our last session about headers. It's like everybody gets a header. We're getting 2 brand new header options that are coming out of Ignite. And the one that I'm most excited about is the extended header. It's essentially giving us the ability to customize the background, which is super cool. It gives us the ability to use photos like the image at the top. We can use patterns in the middle, and then what they're calling illustrations. I get the difference between the patterns and the illustrations, but they kind of basically just look like imagery to me. But we have this ability to now customize the look and feel for that extended piece. This example is perfect for something that needs a little something extra, a little more visual impact to it. So you could considerably use this for, like, say, a leadership site, or maybe your homepage, or in this example, they're using it for a giving site. It's really something that has like a high message component here. But with that level of flexibility comes a lot of things we need to think about from both a design perspective and from a usability perspective. And that's where I'm sort of coming at this. With great power comes great responsibility, in that we can put an image there, but not every image belongs there. And I think it's important to think about your image composition here. If you look at the Contoso Gives example right there, the reason why that image works is because it's really there's space for the logo there, and the text. If that background image was a pattern that went all the way across, your eye would be competing between the title of the site, the logo, and the background image. So it's really important to think about how those things all play off each other. You will see we are getting a couple of extra bells and whistles because we have the ability to turn the logo on and off. We also have the ability to center our text or left justify our text. Left justify is sort of the standard way that we've been looking at things before, and now we're going to be able to center it and make the text a little bit bigger. That's all really great and gives us a whole lot of flexibility. And so that is that part. We're also getting a minimal header, which is one of the things that I've been asking for ages. The existing options right now just take up too much white space, or too much space on the page. So I have a small laptop that I use for a client, And that, when I look at their website, when I look at their intranet, the navigation takes up between the main navigation at the top and then the site header. It's already a quarter of the way down the page before I get to actually view any content. And so, from an available screen real estate perspective, it's really challenging, because at the end of the day, yes, I see the header. The header is consistent across all the sites, but I want to get to the content. I want to read. I want to see the documents in the library. I want to actually get to the part that I want to interact with. So the minimal header is really great because it's essentially the shy header, only persistent. I don't know if folks are aware, but the shy header rolled out, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 months ago. And if you scroll down the page, at the very top of the screen, you get this really thin header that's at the top. And when you go all the way back up to the top, it goes away. But now that's going to be persistent. That's going to be a new option for us to use here.
Doesn't it kind of feel like, Derek, sorry to interrupt, but doesn't it kind of feel like that maybe that shy header should be like, if you, like some way to enable it based on your screen size? You know what I mean? Like sort of responsive design. Like when if you've got full screen and your full screen has a lot of real estate, then you can have the bigger header. And if you have shy header enabled, as you come down, it would turn on. Do you know what I mean? Like, instead of it just being like, oh, we're just going to use that everywhere, even though maybe a bunch of people have a bigger screen. It just seems like a little, I don't know. It seems like it's more should be a responsive thing versus you pick that thing. I don't know.
I can see both sides of that. I think having it there and having it be a very distinct visual element, like the expanded header, I think is really valuable to have that visual impact, to have that image, because the image should relate to the title, should relate to the content. Right. Having it be responsive and having the form factor of that change, depending on the size of your screen, we'll see when it comes out. I'm not going to hold my breath that it's going to be that smart.
No, I know it's not going to be that smart, but I feel like it should have been that smart. Like, it should be like the ability to like say, I want this header to be the header when we get to, to be a responsive header, not to be a persistent one. Anyway, whatever.
I hear what you're saying. I don't know. It's one of those things where I can definitely see the visual impact of having it and having a form factor of it there. Switching it automatically, I think, the response anytime we have when Microsoft makes something automatic and doesn't give us a toggle to turn it on and turn it off is always visceral, that everybody's like, I want to turn it on, I want to turn it off.
No, and I think what I'm saying is that it would be like an optional setting. So you could say, I want the shy header in it, but I only want it to be as a responsive thing. Do you know what I mean? Instead of like just persistent. Anyway.
Yep. Good. Thank you, though. Okay. So not really a whole lot to say there, other than the fact that we are getting the ability to hide the site title and logo, which is nice, especially if you have a lot of stacked navigation. So maybe you have a custom nav bar, you have hub site navigation, and then you're using this for your in-site navigation. Oh, wrong one. All right. We also have a whole bunch of footer options here. And, I think that these are already out right now. I think the big thing that I want to say here is I'm not a fan of the top two, the simple and the extended option, simply because for me, footer content really should be consistent across all of your site pages. And those two options are site specific. And that, to me, that sort of defeats the user experience, perspective there. Emily talked about consistency and having a constant space for feedback. Those are the places where I've seen folks put compliance links and, with whistleblower stuff or about content or links to the help desk that everybody needs all the time. Because these are site scoped, they're really a challenge to do that and have it be consistent across all your sites. So that's why we listed the third option on the bottom, which is a custom SPFX solution. That has its own sort of issues there, because if you're in a situation where you don't have a developer to build that for you, that's an added expense, that's an added piece of technology. So in the instance of time, I'm not going to dive too much deeper on that because I want to spend some time talking about themes. And, themes are really a great way for us to get our custom color palette into SharePoint. And, back in the day, you had two options. You either hand wrote CSS or you used PowerPoint and you created a template in PowerPoint. And I've never seen one of those PowerPoint templates in 2010 or 2013 work out very well. They always ended up from some desktop or somebody's PowerPoint presentation and ended up all of a sudden on SharePoint, and the color combinations just don't work well. So I'm seeing a couple of conversations in the questions in the chat. Julie, can you, if there's something that's relevant, can you just sort of jump in?
Yeah, it was back to your footer
Okay.
question. He was asking if there's still no way to add an image in the footer without the SharePoint Framework app customizer.
You can add an image to the footer. It's a small logo. That's the extent of what you can do there. But no, you can't add like a custom fancy background image or anything, or like a patterned background or anything like that. You also can't. You can't do more than one. You also can't do expand and collapse without using SPFX. Right.
That was the only question we really had.
Okay, cool. All right. So if you haven't seen it before, the theme designer is pretty cool. It lets us take our color palette, our brand color palette, and put in a primary color, a text color, and a background color. And then the theme designer actually takes that and shades the colors up and shades the colors down to give us a well-rounded palette. I had an example, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to go do it. One of the things that it really does very well, though, is it checks how the SharePoint and Office 365 are going to use that color palette and checks it against accessibility. And one of the things that Emily mentioned was contrast ratio. And it's really important to think about that because that is the difference in shade between two colors. So if you see this example here where we've got the primary button that's blue and the white text with the blue background, that text right there, it meets the contrast requirements for someone that's visually impaired. If you have very subtle colors like a red and a white, you may think that those actually have a high enough ratio, but depending on the size of the typography and the shade of the red and the shade of the white, those could actually be incredibly difficult for someone with color blindness, with a visual impairment, who needs to, expand the size of the screen. Those are all the things that we take into consideration as we're thinking about accessibility. But the good news is that the theme designer actually checks it for you right here, and it tells you, you can kind of see that at the very bottom. It gives you the example of what the problem is. So it's primary color on background color. So it's this 0078D4 on white. And so this one is perfectly fine. It has a color ratio of 4.53. The minimum is 4.5.
And then Derek, can I do anything about that default text font?
The default text font or the color of it?
The font.
The font you can't right now. There is, okay.
It's on the backlog. It is on the backlog.
On the road, yeah. It's on the
roadmap.
It's on the roadmap. We've seen a little bit or heard about it a little bit. TBD. I'm gonna reserve judgment until I can actually see it and play with it. But right now, no, you can't change any of the fonts in SharePoint unless you use SPFX, and only that will affect the components that you're writing. So if you write a custom navigation control or a custom footer or a custom web part, but again, from the consistency perspective, you want to make sure that you're in line with the content the users are adding to the page.
5 minutes, Derek.
Yeah. Okay. So the other thing that I will mention very quickly is the Lookbook. If you haven't seen this yet, I really suggest you do, because this is a way for you to see the art of the possible, both from a visual design perspective, but also as a configuration perspective. You can go to this site and you can check out the different parts of it and no Comic Sans for you, Todd. You can see the different sites, and you can actually provision them in your tenant, and then you can take them apart and see how they're configured. So you can see, this is the hero web part at the top, and they used this layout and this imagery. This is how they configure the news. And that's how you can use that not only as a learning opportunity, but also as an art of the possible. Okay.
Todd, I was going to ask Todd, but you need PowerShell to implement the theme after you create it with the theme designer, right?
I do. Sorry. Yes. Yeah, I skipped that part. The theme designer outputs the PowerShell or JSON for you, and then you need to run PowerShell to in there.
Yeah.
And with that note, I'm going to transition it over to Mr. Todd, who's going to talk about all things PowerShell.
Yep, I will be very quick. Number one, I just want to mention that all of my PowerShell windows, I've changed the font to Comic Sans. That is optional, so you can work in your native environment.
I would like to see you work in Wingdings.
I'm going to study on weekends. I'm sure
Duolingo has there you go. Klingon.
Yep, exactly. So a couple of them. I want to say a couple things about what Derek and Emily have said before. I have no design skills whatsoever, none. If everything didn't go with blue jeans, I wouldn't be able to dress myself in the morning.
For animals, for the win.
If there was animals for adults, my wife or I would have bought them for me. But what I like about that stuff is like the theme thing that Derek just showed is it tells me what doesn't work and then tells me why. So I have a fighting chance at making something. So I really like that. I've not used it much, but for an idiot like me, it was really helpful. So for a lot of these things, we get these ideas, making themes, things like that. But if you're already established in Office 365, a lot of these things, every time they introduce something, the modern lists and modern sites and all that, that's great for all of your new things, but all of your old things can't always be made consistent easily. So I wanted to bring up that a lot of these things can be done and automated with PowerShell. And you need, depending on what environment you're comfortable with and what you're, would do things with, you can do a lot of it with the SharePoint online thing from Microsoft or the PNP module, either one. PNP generally mirrors SPO, so you can usually do most of it. But there's setting templates, like Derek said, uploading templates after you've gotten the JSON, all that kind of stuff. That is all in PowerShell. You can also set templates for sites and all that. The navigation options he talked about, assigning the footers, you can do that. So that's all in PowerShell. So in my head, I'm imagining, connecting, walking through all your tenant sites and applying a new theme or setting the footer, things like that for consistency. When you're looking for these things, I don't have a ton of examples, again, for time, but I just threw that get command in there. Whenever I'm trying to figure out how to do something with PowerShell, I always start with something like that. So get command, that module SharePoint star will give you all the results from all the modules that have SharePoint in the name. So SharePoint PNP and SharePoint Online. So you got them both there. And then the name. So that command there will give you all of the commandlets that have the word theme in them. So then you can set theme, whatever. So if I was looking for the navigation stuff, I would replace nav or theme with nav, so on. So that's just a good tip for all PowerShell, but when you're trying to figure out how to do this, that helps. The last thing that I wanted to mention is a lot of these things, though I don't think all of them, can be assigned to new sites with the PNP provisioning engine. So you can assign a theme, all that kind of stuff, so the new things coming out automatically get all your widgets and stuff. And also, if you use PowerShell, you can use any number of automation things as part of your provisioning process. Okay. That is all that I have.
All right, and right on time. I'll hand this back over to you to close it out.
Thanks, Todd, and then Derek and Emily for everything today. There's a lot to take away, and we realized we just scratched the surface. And we were saying as we were preparing for this, Emily and Derek, this is probably a 75-minute conference session that we've jammed into 30 minutes. So for deeper dives on this, we've attached a lot of links to takeaways and resources that you can use. Thanks. I think we answered a lot of questions as we went, but keep the dialogue going if you're so inclined. Also, we will expect we look forward to talking to you in 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks, it'll be the day after Election Day in the U.S. So we're thinking about unity and coming together as a country and as a community. So putting the unity in community is our topic, and it's going to be about all of the resources that are available to you through the community, whether that's PNP, user groups, etc., community docs. We'll kind of cover a guide to those along that theme. So thank you everybody for joining us today. If there's nothing else, we'll let you get back to your day, and wish you the best and encourage you. Please vote.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Mike. The
Bye,
only other
everyone.
thing I would say is if any of these topics you want a deeper dive in, please go to the Ask Some Praxis link at the bottom of the screen and
Yeah, thanks, Derek.
let us know.
Yeah, perfect.
Thanks.
Thanks everybody.
Bye.